this meeting back to order, the reconvene session from the last meeting. And just to do it, we're going to have, Ms. Callen, could you say the prayer for us and we'll get started?
I'm trying to get off the stage.
Thank you. If everybody bow their heads, Lord, be with us today as we travel to and from these meetings. Be with the staff that serve us and all the folks throughout the Cherokee Nation, those that are ill and those have other concerns. Help us make wise decisions and be with our troops as they fight for our freedoms overseas. And be with everybody as they travel this holiday weekend. Amen.
Thank you. I don't know if it's necessary to call the roll since we're in a reconvene session, but Shelley says it is, so we just call the roll, please.
Harley Buzzard.
Here.
Chris Soap.
Here.
Bill England. Bill John Baker.
Here.
Jack Baker.
Here.
Julia Coates. Bradley Cobb. Joe Crittenden.
Here.
Jody Fishinghawk. Meredith Fraley. Janelle Fulbright. Don Garvin. Tina Gloria Jordan.
Present.
Curtis Snell. David Thornton. Kara Callen Watts.
Honey.
Okay, good meeting in the reconvene session today, and I know last meeting I was trying to get it over with, but we're back here today. And what we've got on the agenda is a resolution approving and authorizing the submission of the fiscal year 2012 Indian Housing Plan to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Do I hear a motion to approve?
I make a motion to be approved.
Motion made and second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign.
I've got some discussion.
We've been here for an hour, so I've waited on discussion, so I'm going to open up for another 5 minutes, and we're going to take a vote on the thing.
So have we voted on it, or are we going to discuss it?
We'll go
Or
ahead and discuss it for the next 5 minutes.
okay. So are we going to have Marvin come up? And
We can. Marvin, you got, 5 minutes that gives an overview, then we'll take a vote.
Okay, if I could take just a minute or two, knowing the time, that this is where we put all the Nahasta money into one Indian housing plan for fiscal year 2012. We're planning to spend $38 million. Wanted to get on the record for those that haven't attended the working group meeting that we believe that there will be another $3.2 million in addition to what's contained in this particular Indian housing plan. The 2011 has not been allocated yet, but we have reason to believe that we'll have an additional $3.2 million that would go into the plan. The plan consists of creating over 2,000 home ownership opportunities, 4,000 rental opportunities, as well as law enforcement, employment and training opportunities. About 17.2 million will go into home ownership types of opportunities, 9.4 million for rental opportunities. Knowing the time frame, I'll just end there and see if
Ms. Jordan, you got a question?
of that 38 million, are we going to build homes this time with this money?
We have, we're going to have for sure the self-help construction in there, and I believe there's 16 houses in there. Then we have the mortgage assistance, and I believe there's 283 home ownership opportunities in there, and that would be the choice of the families as to how many of those would want new construction as compared to acquisition.
And then how much money are we putting in for the law enforcement?
$1,195,000 plus IDC. That's just a direct cost amount.
And what was the breakdown on the 283 mortgage assistance and the 16 self-help homes? What was the total cost there on that?
That's about $6 million.
Okay. And the 4,000 rental vouchers?
There's 4,000 what I call opportunities. It consists of various things other than the vouchers. But that's 9.4 million going into those rental and homeless prevention activities that we have in the plan.
And we have some acquisition of land in there?
Yes, that's correct.
And what will that acreage bring us to totally for potential home sites?
That would be, my calculation shows, considering if we purchase in 2011, as you know, the money currently budget, close to 300 sites. I got 296 is how much I have.
So we'll have about 300 sites, but in this plan, we're going to continue to buy land?
That's right.
And how many more sites will this plan add?
I have 232 in this particular plan.
And that's over the 300 that we've already got?
That's correct.
So we're going to have 500 and...
Yeah, and I had left out the Redbird and Fairfield, so it's actually over 600. I got 643.
Well, I guess, Marvin, my question is, we're going to have about 600 sites, but we're only offering 16 self-help homes, and that's about average of what we're offering in our yearly
That's
IHPs. Do we need 600 sites? We're working already probably into the next 50 years.
the ideal is that the land acquisition is part of the new construction program contained in this Indian Housing Plan. When those sites are purchased and then become available, such as that Fairfield Redbird, then the mortgage assistance will be tied to those, or some mortgage assistance. So people who get mortgage assistance, who right now, because they don't have land, a lot of them are choosing acquiring existing houses, maybe in places that they really would prefer to live out in Cherokee communities, but instead they're acquiring existing houses. So this creates the opportunity for people to utilize that mortgage assistance for new construction in Cherokee communities.
But if we do this land like we've done the last two sites, Fairfield and Redbird, we're not going to give them the land.
That's right. Yeah.
So why would they want to build their house there?
Well, the ideal will be that it will remain in Cherokee Nation's ownership, be subject to Cherokee Nation law, subject to the tribe or the nation exercising its tribal sovereignty by creating laws there. We have every reason to believe that there are going to be families that will want to live in that situation. They will own the houses, they won't own the land. And they will be living in Cherokee communities. So that's the idea behind the plan.
And that was the idea behind Fairfield and Redbird, right?
That's correct.
And now we're turning, is it Redbird, we're gonna turn into rental for some period of time because we don't have families that are willing to accept the concept that we're setting up?
No, it's not necessarily that at this point. It's just that we don't have the codes and the laws in place. Those codes and law, in order for somebody to live in a home ownership situation on tribal land, needs to be in place. Those codes and those laws have to come before the legislative body to get enacted, and they simply haven't been here. So we don't have those things in place in order for people to have those kinds of home ownership situations. So we got to do the rental in the interim period of time.
Are we saying that all the families we're going to rent to them will ultimately become the homeowners of those sites?
That would be the intent, yes.
And when you say that would be the intent, do we know that for sure?
No, not absolutely for sure.
I mean, the intent, and those rules are being worked on by Linda Donaldson of my office. It is to give them the intent of our law and our rules and regulations so that they will have home ownership interest and a permanent leasehold in that particular property. So it won't be like a rental. The real property underneath the home will be in the name of the Cherokee Nation. But the homeowners that live there will have an almost permanent leasehold over the property that is identified.
It's the almost permanent part that really concerns me, because we've tried this concept before, Pat. We tried it down at the Housing Authority and it didn't work.
I understand.
People want to own the land underneath their houses. Eventually, when they pay that house off, they have this idea they're going to get a deed. They don't realize they're going to get a certificate that just says you've completed making your payments. It's been a real problem for us. I can point out several additions over in Adair County where it's been a real problem because the families just do not have that understanding of what our concept appears to be and what their belief's going to be 20 years from now when they have those houses paid for.
Well, I don't disagree, but I would say that that's the reason we're trying to develop some comprehensive land tenure codes so that people can have that insurance. And I know exactly what you're talking about because I'm familiar with those sites that you're referring to. And we don't want to recreate that type of environment, and that's why we want to develop a good comprehensive code. Some Indian tribes in this country have already done that. What was the example that you cited to me, Marvin?
Pequots.
The Pequots in Connecticut, right? So we're trying to...
How many have they done?
I don't know, they've started.
It's fairly comprehensive.
They get federal finance and federal private finance and guarantee on
Because
their
they're very
properties
small
now.
compared to our tribe.
And actually nationwide, if we really looked at it, most of the Indian housing money is in that situation because it's going to Indian reservations, and the Indian reservations are simply what we're describing here in concept is that type of land ownership. So vast majority of the funding is in fact already going to home ownership in that situation.
But the bottom line is we're not a reservation tribe. And we're putting aside 600 sites in the hopes that people will accept this idea that we're going to build a house on those sites and they're never going to own the land. And I think it's going to be a hard sell to our people who are used to seeing their neighbors own their land and their house at the same time, and are used to being able to get into that equity so that when their house is paid off, if they want to borrow money against it for some reason, for improvements or put a kid through college or some of the things that all homeowners have to do, they're not going to be in a position to do it easily. And I have a real concern that we keep putting money in these budgets for land acquisition. We're going to be 600 sites ahead of a building project, and right now we're limping along saying we're going to do 16, we're going to do 15, we're going to do 13 homes. It just doesn't make sense to me to keep buying that amount of land and just hold it for future use and expect that this Field of Dreams idea is going to continue to work within Cherokee Nation.
Okay.
I have a real concern about that. And Marvin, I know this is not necessarily all of your ideas. I know we've talked privately about some of your ideas. I just think that we as a council need to understand how this thing breaks down. 600 sites, and we're building or giving them packages of self-help at $16 a year. That means we're way far ahead and have a lot of surplus land on hand that we're supposedly saying we're going to build on.
Okay, I think I'm gonna cut the discussion off. Now, I have one more person with a comment.
Could I just briefly?
Okay, go ahead, Robin, then we're gonna move on.
I will point out that land acquisition constitutes a little over 5% of the total money that we've been using over the last 5 years. That means 95% of the money is going into fee simple ownership and all of those kinds of activities, and this will be owned permanently by the Cherokee Nation. Pretty much a little bit over 5% of the money is all of that will be permanently owned by Cherokee Nation.
And I would like to respond just briefly to that.
Ms. Watt is up, then I'll give you one last chance to respond. Ms. Watt?
Yeah, I actually had a number of questions, so, some of these things keep being brought up, so I'm just gonna tell you my questions and let you answer in one deal to try to shorten it.
Okay.
There keeps being these questions about costs and such for Redbird project. I want you to clarify any of those concerns, because I thought this was a stimulus grant, and isn't necessarily part of our housing deal. And then a comparison, if you could, the Indian Housing Plan for our citizens, not for us as politicians, but our citizens, how it compares today versus what the impact would be if we actually did the new construction that people seem to be proposing. And then, in that, clarify, so under the mortgage assistance program, how many people are we able to serve with X amount of money versus new construction? And then I want you to talk more about why we're purchasing the land. And I want you to clarify what the housing authority has on money. There was last meeting, there was a comment about how much housing authority is setting on money, and if you could clarify that, I would appreciate it. That's my list of questions, so.
I'll try to answer those real quickly. The questions about Redbird is in fact stimulus money, $5 million to build 15 houses at Redbird and develop the infrastructure, utilities, roads for a Fairfield site and Redbird site, which consists of about 400 acres. That was applied for and granted. Federal government knows exactly what we're spending the money for, what we propose to spend the money for, and the public can too, because it is a Recovery Act or stimulus, and you can go on the website to recovery.gov and see exactly what we're spending the money for, which is completely in compliance with what we applied for.
And separate from the IHP.
That's exactly right. It's separate and apart. In regard to what we call the benefits of this Indian housing plan compared to what I'll call the 100% subsidized in new construction or new houses, as it's often termed, we're providing home ownership opportunities to 5 people or 5 families to every 2 that could be to get home ownership under the old plan. In addition to that, we could actually do a 5-to-1 ratio, but we don't, because we use money for other purposes. Those other purposes include about 1,000 people or families a year who receive self-sufficiency counseling, home ownership training to allow them to become future homeowners, to get their credit in line. So we serve an additional 1,000 people that way because of the transition from the old way where you didn't check credit, didn't have to access private finance and those sorts of things. So we're giving as many people an opportunity to transition over to being able to secure financing on their own rather than completely through the grant proceeds. In addition, we're purchasing 40 to 50 sites for new construction through the mortgage assistance program a year. Again, that would go into the Cherokee Nation's name and be part of that permanent stock of land. One of the big hindrances to people doing new construction under mortgage assistance is not having access to land. In addition, we're doing about 10 or 15 of the self-help houses, which are 100% construction. In addition to that, one of the major things that gets missing is because we built new construction in the past and did it under a lease purchase arrangement, we're having to subsidize the management of those units from this money. So there's ongoing cost above and beyond paying for the cost of the houses initially that come out of this Indian housing plan. So the other question was about purchasing the land. It tries to enact the community strategy. Also, it's purchasing land around those areas where there's jobs, such as around the casinos, to try to get people in those situations. Again, match it up with the mortgage assistance program, trying to enhance the bringing in the private financing in order to promote home construction rather than using 100% of the grant proceeds, which makes it available to a bunch more people, the more money we can bring into the park. And it is very, very specifically intended to purchase surplus, so-called surplus land that's being described, because we want all these kids growing up right now when we're enhancing or we're promoting financial education, being able to take care of yourself. Those kids growing up, we want them to be able to have home sites out there available when they get of an age and are able to secure housing. And we want those housing opportunities in Cherokee communities. So we're trying to build or purchase land not just for the identified people here and now, but for those future generations. And the last thing you asked about was the housing authority money. I'm not sure exactly how much money there is, the housing authority, but they have their own board who makes their own decisions. But we, in fact, our Cherokee Nation is going to ask that a bunch of that money be used to develop the infrastructure on these lands that we're acquiring, the water and the sewer and the access of roads. An example would be what we call the Kirk property out right outside the Tahlequah here. We're planning to hopefully utilizing some of those proceeds of sale of the housing authority to develop those properties and not utilize the grant money. In fact, we did, this administration actually used the housing authority money a few years ago, and in conjunction with that money built 300 houses. And from that experience chose to have determined that, there's a better way to do it. So we have actually did that. We actually did that a few years ago. And we're still paying for it, again, through the managing of those houses that we built with 100% of the money. We're still utilizing money from this Indian housing plan to manage those houses that were constructed in that manner. So the other thing is, just let me stop there.
I'm going to take, Ms. Torrey, you had another comment, and we're going to move on. I'm running into Mrs. Coach's time, and I want to end this meeting here pretty quickly.
Marvin, what I think you just told us earlier was that $6 million was going to be used on the 16 self-help homes and 283 mortgage assistance homes. So that was going to leave $32 million plus this $3.2 million that you think you're going to get, and this IHP for other building activities or other activities, I guess, related to housing. What I'm saying is $6 million is not enough to create housing. We're leaving $32 million on the table that everybody else appears to be dividing up for something that is indirect housing activities. We need to use some of that money to build some homes and offer other alternatives for other constituents that may not be able to get the mortgage assistance or may not be able to utilize the self-help concept. I'm not trying to take away from self-help. I'm not trying to take away from mortgage assistance. I'm saying there appears to be a better way to use more of our money for direct housing activities. And that's where I have a problem and continue to have a problem with these IHPs that put so little into actual housing. We get $38 million, we use $6 million of it for housing activities. The rest of it is what I call indirect housing activities. And I think that we can do better, and I think this body needs to understand these housing dollars are not going on houses. They're going to other parts of the tribe. Those are indirect housing activities. I believe someday HUD's going to come down here and want to know what we've done with our Nahasta funds. Show us where the houses are at. We're not going to be able to do that. I also take issue with just saying that Redbird is a stimulus activity, so we shouldn't be worried about how the money is used. Everybody in this room is a taxpayer in the United States. Folks, that is tax money being used on those projects. We're building homes up there that are averaging $238,000 apiece. And I have a problem with using tax money and taking that much for those type of houses that are being built. So don't just sit here and tell me that because it's stimulus money, we should ignore the fact that we use $238,000 on each one of those houses. I also have a problem with us talking about taking infrastructure money from proceeds of sale.
Cut the discussion off. I think I've run over into Mrs. Coates' time, and we have a motion on the floor and second. And I'm going to go ahead and ask for the vote on this, and then what we can do, this is just to get the 2011 dollars down, and we can have more discussions on how we're going to allocate the dollars out. Budget times are coming, so there's the time to allocate those dollars also. So I'm going to go ahead and cut the discussion off and call for the vote on this resolution that's out here. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Okay, I believe the ayes had it as far as approving the resolution. Unless we want to take a roll call vote, we can do that. There ain't none to pass. We'll move this on to full council. I think out of this committee, that's the general process we've done before. So we'll go ahead and do that to full council.
Saying we're gonna do that.
Motion to adjourn. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Thank you.